This episode of Goblin Slayer is essentially the Battle of Helm's Deep on a farm. Greetings, my friends. It's time to take a look at the penultimate episode of Goblin Slayer, the setup for the big final confrontation, where Goblin Slayer is going to battle against a Goblin Lord, a goblin who is quite literally the king of an entire army of super bloodthirsty beasts. This episode right here, I have to say, was pretty damn fun. Not really reinventing the wheel or anything, but giving the viewers exactly what they want from Goblin Slayer, which is some hardcore, no-holds-barred, super bloody, badass fantasy action. And I couldn't have loved it even more. I was really afraid that the entire episode was basically just going to be a straight setup for the finale, but luckily about halfway through, they got right into the confrontation, a massive battle against hundreds of goblins. And it didn't disappoint, as we finally got to see more of the side characters in action, and we even got to see some of them teaming up in combinations that I never thought that we would see before. So not only are you going to get the mainstays like the elf, the lizard man, and the dwarf, but we're also going to get the return of the douchey lance man, the super sexy witch lady, and even the versions of Guts and Griffith in this show. They all get to show up, they all get to do something awesome, and it's really what made this episode just work. That and probably the final seconds of this episode, which sent a massive chill down my spine. So the quick summary of the episode is that we know that this big invasion is getting ready to happen. Goblin Slayer has discovered all of these footsteps right outside the farm, and he has summarized that they're going to try and take over the village and steal all the cows. They need those dairy products, and if they steal all the dairy products, what is the lizard man going to snack on? So he decides to go to the guild, and he pleads his story to all of the warriors there, asking for their help to go up against a group of goblins. And of course, Lance Douche comes up and he's like, what's the reward gonna be? I mean, we're adventurers. We don't do this shit for fun. This is a job. And of course, Goblin Slayer, in the badass way that he does things, offers up his very life and all of his possessions. This manages to move Lance Douche, and he decides that he's actually going to join him in battle, which of course causes everybody to want to join the cause. They lift their swords, hurrah, and then we have to wait a whole episode to get to the final battle. Not really, though. They waste no time in bringing us to the big final battle against these goblins, and we finally get to see everyone in action teaming up. Now, this battle here was pretty intense and featured some really great moments, but it also featured that very distinctive, super disturbing stuff that Goblin Slayer is all about. At first, it seems like the goblins are going to have an extreme advantage in the battle when they come in with these massive shields, which are actually just giant planks of wood with women attached to them. Women who have been stripped bare and beaten. They're literally using living human meat shields. And this scene was highly disturbing, but immediately the tables are turned, where they manage to not only save all these girls, but bring the blood to the goblins. They all just completely destroy these guys with arrows, swords, and magic attacks. I especially loved seeing the dwarf and the super sexy witch teaming up together to put all of these goblins to sleep, allowing everybody to come in and sweep up with all of their signature abilities. Even the younger ones get involved, but things get really intense when we finally get to see the Hobbs, and of course the goblin champions come in. And last time, they had trouble fighting against one. This time, there's going to be two. Now, I was fully convinced that in this episode, there was just going to be a massive death toll. We were going to lose a lot of characters, in particular the main ones, or at least the main side characters, which would have left something of an impact despite the fact that they don't have names and we don't know anything about them. Just their visual cues and overall personalities is what we have to go on here, and I actually found myself worrying for some of them. But it didn't matter. They just absolutely fuck these goblins up. The big dude who looks like Guts just shish kebabs all of him with his massive sword. They all get a really cool moment here, and it's super satisfying. In fact, they're pretty much victorious in this episode. However, there still is one obstacle left. And that obstacle is going to be the Goblin Lord himself. And guess who's going after him? Fuck yes, it is Goblin Slayer. So what's the rundown on this episode of Goblin Slayer? What was supposed to be just a standard build-up to the final episode of the series ended up turning into a pretty big epic fantasy battle. And like I said, it's not reinventing the wheel, and even the animation itself is really not all that impressive, But it's finally great to see things like build up to this point where finally all of the characters realize the absolute danger of these goblins. Even though by themselves they're nothing, together they can cause a lot of damage, which is going to exacerbate things for a lot of people. But it was just a really thrilling sequence of watching Goblin Slayer offer up everything that he has in order to get people to actually join his fight. It was also a big moment for the character, as he's always been known as a lone wolf. He does things on his own, but it was when he met the priestess and the elf and the lizard man and the dwarf that he finally started to realize the importance of friends and teaming up together to stop super powerful things. Sounds really cheesy, doesn't it? Well, it is an anime, but it is an anime which is soaked in all sorts of fantasy blood, and this episode definitely delivered on that action. The second half of the episode was a fantastic juxtaposition to the first, delivering a lot of really solid action and great team-ups from a lot of the fan-favorite characters of the series. Like, I really can't understate it enough. This episode was just really fun to watch, but it still wasn't a perfect episode of the series. I thought the opening scene of Cowgirl and Goblin Slayer was a little cheesy, especially when he said, "Don't make that face in front of me," and then they do this immediate hard cut to this like super goofy expression, and I don't know whether to laugh at it or to cry. I also have to give credit to the Guild Girl. She's actually one of the bigger heroes of this episode, as she's the one who's fully responsible for helping get a lot of these other soldiers involved in this big battle, saying that if they kill a goblin, they're gonna get a gold coin. So imagine if you kill 10 of those things, that could buy a lot of tacos. But ultimately for me, my favorite scene of the episode has to be the final shot of Goblin Slayer. Even though you cannot see his face or read his expressions, you can just feel the rage from the atmosphere and the amazing design of watching that like fiery red energy just sort of like exploding out of his eyeball and coming through the grills of his helmet. It is just badass. And so was this episode of Goblin Slayer. Highly entertaining, even though ultimately, end of the day, this is trashy popcorn anime. But it still really is fun to watch. I can't deny that. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. And you guys should definitely check it out if you're following the series. But before you guys go today, make sure to tell me what you thought about this episode in the comments section below, and what you hope to see from the final episode when Goblin Slayer throws down with a Goblin Lord. What do you hope to see, and do you want to see more from the future of the Goblin Slayer anime series? Thank you all for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down, baby.